Yo, what's up guys, Insane Game Freak here to bring you kind of a discussion. Essentially what we're going to talk about is anime pacing, pretty much the extremes and everything in between. So simply let's just get started with it. So pretty much this particular discussion is just talking about anime and the pacing in it. And pretty much the main question of this is, I'm going to first ask a question about the extremes. Which extreme would you prefer? Whether you would rather have an anime that's slower paced or would you rather have an anime that's fast paced. And then pretty much we're just going to discuss every in-between issue, kind of using animes as examples. So the reason why I was just kind of thinking, and this came into my mind, I was wondering, because when I think about the fan bases for certain shows, I know a lot of people hate certain shows because it's fast paced or slow paced. And you hate other shows because it's slow-paced versus fast-paced. So my question is, if you had to choose, would you rather to have an anime that's strictly slow-paced or an anime that's strictly fast-paced? Now, me personally, I would prefer to have an anime strictly slow-paced, and the reason why is because, to me, a fast-paced anime will skip things that I need to see. I'll give you an example. The thing I hated about some of the, My Little Monster was the fact that it skips things and makes things go way too quickly to the point where you don't even feel like there's a sense of development. And usually the funny thing is I end up preferring slow-paced animes anyway. One Piece is a slow-paced anime. And I love One Piece. Kimi no Todoke is a slow-paced shoujo. And I love Kimi no Todoke. You know, I would prefer a show be slow-paced than a show be fast-paced. Because fast-paced, I just don't... The problem with fast-paced shows, and this is just my personal opinion, you can't get connected to a character that's like jumping through 3 or 4 different types of development in the course of like 3 episodes. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, you're developing the character, but I can't connect with him or her, so I can't enjoy it as much. I mean, slow-paced, yeah, shit might drag, but I'll know for a fact nothing's getting skipped over, and I'll be able to enjoy it. I'll be connected to the character, and that's how I view it. If I'm connected to the character, I don't mind enjoying the ride for however long it is. That's why, that's kind of the mark of a good anime anyway. A good anime is an anime where, by the end of the anime, you don't want the anime to end. You're so connected with the character, you want it to keep going, depending on the show, mind you. Like, if it's a romance, like for Kimi no Todoke, you may want to see Kazuya and Sabako's relationship further, in which case most people would say read the manga, but I'm just talking about in the anime form. Or for One Piece, in a sense, it's like, well, One Piece, when it ends, but still, the whole point is that you want to see more adventures if it's a show like that. With fast-paced anime, I might get through the plot and the characters and all this other shit really, really quickly, but if I have no connection to anyone, I'm not going to really care. I don't even know, would people even define Fullmetal Alchemist as fast-paced? Actually, that's another show that people don't like that is fast-paced. Well, Brotherhood anyway, because the beginning of Brotherhood is retardedly fast-paced. Most of us who say that, though, have seen the original, but there are some who have said that who haven't seen the original and still say it feels fast-paced. We don't like FMA because of that. We don't like the first half of FMA because of that until we get to the new stuff in which it slows down. That's how I feel. If I had to choose between the two, I'd rather have a slow-paced anime in terms of the extremes anyway. Now, the shit in between. Because there are certain things and certain genres of anime that you would rather have be quick or slow. For example, when it comes to anime fights, would you rather those be fast-paced or slow-paced? Because for me, I'm kind of weird with, like, I want to say, I want a fast-paced fight, but at the same time, I want the fight to be a fight. Like, the problem with fast-paced fights is that you get shit like Hunter x Hunter, where a fight literally only lasts like 10 minutes. Like, I take it like this. I take it compared to a Hunter x Hunter fight versus a One Piece fight. Because I think One Piece has like the slowest fights out of the bigger shonen. Yeah, it probably has the slowest fights. I think Naruto's a good middle in between. But I'm talking about in streams. Actually, no, I take that back. Dragon Ball Z has the slowest fights. Dragon Ball Z has, bar none, the slowest fights I've ever seen, period. Would I rather have a fight that's retardedly quick or have a fight that's pretty slow? I'm weird with it because certain slow fights I like, but certain fast fights I like. Like, I think the Roy Mustang versus Lust thing, or Roy Mustang versus Envy, or Greed slash Wrath versus Greed slash Ling versus like Wrath was kind of a fast-paced fight. I like the fast-paced fights, but at the same time, as much as people want to hate on the whole Goku versus Frieza where 5 minutes lasted over 20 episodes or some shit, you were still tense during that entire fight. Mind you, see, the other thing is there's another factor that comes into this too, whether it's your first time watching. I'm going to say first time watching because that seems like a more fair, unbiased situation. The first time you watched Goku versus Frieza, you didn't really mind the pacing. You know, you were just tense every time you watched an episode of that fight, even though that fight did last way longer than it needed to. Same thing for One Piece. As much as people praise the Inosuke fights, people do realize a lot of those fights took forever to finish. Like Rob Lucci versus Luffy lasts over like 20 episodes too, I think. Because the fight starts, and then by the end of the fight, everyone else is finished with everything. Robin is saved and shit. Like, a lot of these, like, as much as people want to admit that Rob Lucci is a great fight, it is still considered a slow-paced fight because it lasts over the span of, like, multiple episodes. Like, I think it is, like, almost over 20 episodes, something around there, because the fights are so slow-paced. Even, like, Zoro versus Kaku and, Sanji versus Jabura wasn't that long. Nami versus Khalifa, but Luffy versus Lucci was, like, the bar none long-ass fight. And people seem to love that fight. But then again, most people who say they love that fight are really talking about that last episode it ends at, where you get the Usopp speech and fucking Luffy gets back up and Jet Gatling to the wall and it was ridiculous and shit. But that's what most people are talking about when it comes to that fight anyway. So when it comes to fights, it's kind of harder to pick because depending on the show, it can be done better than others. Like, I would say... it's weird because even Hunter x Hunter, the quick fights aren't bad. It's just they're quick. But the problem with, long fights like DBZ and One Piece is that they take for fucking ever and you're sometimes not invested. But then once again, if we're talking about our first impressions, if we're talking about a person who's never seen the series before watching these episodes, I think you would want a long fight, especially if the character's been built up for a while. Mind you, I am talking, like, when I mentioned Dragon Ball Z and One Piece, Rob Lucci and Frieza were built up at the beginning of their arcs. So it's like, that fight better have lasted a while. Whereas the short fights, like the Wrath fights, Lust fights, Envy fights, even the Uvo shit in the new 2011 Hunter x Hunter anime fight with him and Kurapika, they were all fast fights, but they weren't really built up that much. So I guess it just... It's weird because most slow-paced anime would have this kind of build-up, whereas fast-paced anime won't. I guess I would probably still say slow-paced, purely just because I know that those fights seem to be the most memorable. Even though I'm not really downing the other ones, but almost every One Piece fan remembers fucking Luffy versus Lucci, and every Dragon Ball Z fan remembers Goku versus Frieza. Not saying Roy versus Lust or Roy Mustang versus Envy is any weaker, but it's such a hard one. Literally, I can go either way. It just really depends on what kind of day it is. At the end of the day, I'm probably going to still say slow-paced fights, but it's one of those things that can easily switch for me. And as I say, it depends on the genre too. Like for shonen, I kind of want slow-paced. I'm so used to slow-paced shonen. That's the problem. Fast-paced shonen just feels weird to me. But actually, what the fuck is a good fast-paced shonen I can even make the argument for? I guess Naruto would be one, and Naruto's not bad, but then again, Naruto is not my favorite, so that's saying something. I guess when it comes to shonen, I guess I prefer them slow-paced. When it comes to shoujo, I haven't seen enough, but I guess the argument I would probably make out the gate is, I don't think I would mind those. See, the only two things I'm basing this on, it's like fucking Kimi no Todoke and like My Little Monster. Considering I dropped My Little Monster after like 3 or 4 episodes, it's not boding well. I think that one, honestly, that could work either way. It really just depends on how it's done. Most anime you would prefer a mix of the two anyway. But there are certain things that are going to be more fast-paced than others, even in shows that mix it well. Like, I think for FMA Brotherhood, they kind of sped up the exposition, but had like the fights be longer than what you would think they should be. And I'm really talking about the later half of Brotherhood. Like, the beginning half of Brotherhood, a lot of shit was fast-paced. And then when you got to the latter half, everything kind of slowed down, but it was still fucking cool as shit. Like, it's weird. You gotta know when to, like, speed it up and slow it down. Like, I feel like exposition should be the part you slow down, whereas, like, the fights and shit could be fast-paced. But then again, it also depends on how the author writes, because not all authors write the same. There's a lot of different factors that go into this, and I know me fucking even making this discussion is going to be very convoluted and confusing, because there's a lot of different ways you can come at this shit, because there is no right answer. You know, I personally prefer slow-paced animes in general, but when it comes to certain aspects, like exposition, I want that to be slow-paced because I want to understand what I'm fucking reading or watching. Well, watching in this case, you know. If you're explaining the rules of the world and how power-ups work and shit, like for example, Hunter x Hunter and Nin. I don't mind if you devote an entire episode explaining Nin to me, because Nin was a very, very complex battle system, and I want to be able to get it. Whereas, you know, you give me something like Goku and Frieza fighting, that doesn't necessarily need to be a shit ton of episodes. I mean, that's why people say DBZ Kai is the definitive version, because it does away with all the bullshit, you know. Having extended things is good for tension, but if you're rewatching a series, you know, you're not really going to give a damn. You just want to see the fights. So you just want to see the violence go off. That's the whole fucking point at that point. And I guess other genres like slice of life or maybe sci-fi and shit. Like, for Level E, I think for the most part, had decent pacing. The problem with Level E, though, was just that Level E is one, and once again, it also depends on what kind of anime it is. Because if it's like a mystery anime, like When They Cry, or anime where you don't have a clear idea what the fuck is about to happen, the pacing can be either awesome and, you know, even set the mood better for the next episode, or it could just take you out of it completely. Like when I watched Another was slow as hell for like the first few episodes, and then like picked up. But it's like, is that a pacing issue, or is that just how they place the characters and shit? Because an anime can be slow paced, but you not notice it because of how well the characters are. As I said, it's like just saying pacing is such a vague ass discussion. So for those watching this and who want to respond in any way you want to, just know that there's a million different ways you could come at this shit. Because it depends a lot. Like, pacing is like one of the last things you kind of worry about. Most people are worried about the characters, how the plots are going to work, how plot holes, and they're connecting everything else. Pacing is one of the last things they have to deal with, because you just got to get that damn story out. You got to understand how you're going to write this bitch. But for me, I guess at the end of the day, slower paced things seem to be my cup of tea, but then again, I usually have great characters to work with, but at the same time, you can do fast paced and it'd be awesome. Middle ground is for people, it's kind of for the series that have portions that need to be slow and portions that need to be fast. Like Hunter x Hunter goes through that, where it's like slow explanations for fighting abilities and shit, and maybe the basis behind the world. Like FMA, the same thing. It's a government-based world. I'm expecting a position out of that. You know, for One Piece, you kind of need the exposition because of how fucking weird and crazy everything is. For Dragon Ball Z, it really didn't need to be slow-paced because all it is fights. It's like, oh, these guys are coming here. They're going to attack us. We're going to fight them. Oh, no, my son died. Now I got to go fucking get the Dragon Balls and wish my son back to life. Oh, no, he killed my wife. Now I got to go beat his ass in the blind fit of rage. Like, that doesn't need to be, like, 16 episodes. That could be, like, 4 episodes. Because those are just, like, straightforward series, I guess. Like, if it's a straightforward show that doesn't really need too much development, you can make it quicker. That's why you have Kai for DBZ, because DBZ doesn't necessarily need to be as long as it is. Mind you, there are probably parts in One Piece you can make the argument for, too. Same thing for Naruto. Kimi no Todoke technically doesn't need to be as long as it is, but it works out. But you can kind of, as I said in my Season 2 review, Season 2 felt like padding. So even then, you can make the argument that some people do this to draw to make tension, but the problem is that when you have a slow-paced series like that, it also feels like you're just padding it out to extend the time how long it fucking runs. I mean, hell, even mangas feel that way. When you get to certain plot points, you're just like, what the fuck does this have to do with anything? Or maybe you come up with, or you realize that, hey, they could have gotten finished with this arc way quicker. You know, there's a lot of different things. And maybe pacing should be one of those first things you think about, but at the same time, you really only notice it being a problem at either the beginning of the show or during a certain arc. During a certain arc is usually when it shows up, or at the beginning. It's never anything that's inherently bugging you the entirety of the show, unless you just didn't notice it at the beginning. That's usually how it works, but I don't know, I'm kind of rambling. Which is kind of how my discussions go nowadays. But I mean, really, it's such a vague topic, and I didn't realize it until as I was fucking discussing it. That's the joy of making videos at the top of your head. But I'm curious to see how many people respond and what would you prefer in different situations. Like, do you think the beginning of FMA Brotherhood is, way too quick? I don't think it's too quick, but it definitely feels weird for someone who's seen the original. One Piece at times feels slow as shit, depending on certain places, especially when you have plot points like Luffy getting stuck in random fucking places in the middle of arcs so we can hold him off until the end of the arc. Like how in Water 7 he got stuck in between two buildings for like a few episodes. Alabasta, when he kept losing and then getting lost and shit. They had to figure, well, Alabasta wasn't offensive. Skype when he was running out the beanstalk forever and shit, and he got trapped in a snake for half the arc. When you have plot points like that, you can kind of feel like they're just fucking with you. Like either the author didn't know what to do with the character until a certain point in the series or a certain point in the arc, or actually that's usually what it is. Because legitimately, it's like Luffy, you get stuck in a snake for like half of the fighting part of Skype, and you don't even reappear until everyone's fucked up. I'm like, as much as I like Oda, you could kind of tell that was a cop-out. You didn't know what to do with Luffy for that long, so you decide. That's kind of the advantage of having a stupid main character. You can get away with doing shit like that because the character is known for being dumb. But I'm kind of going off topic, but you get my whole point. So in the comment section below, discuss this any way you want to. I'm just curious to see other people's opinions on this because of how widespread this topic is between the issue of pacing in anime. And if you want to bring manga into it, that's perfectly fine. It's a correlated medium because most of these animes are mangas anyway, or light novels or visual novels, or whatever the fuck. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for the support. This has been the Insane Game Freak. Lots of game, play to win, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace off.